Welcome, everyone. We've put together this deep dive just for you.
That's right. Today we're getting into the global extract pen market. It's quite a fascinating area.
It really is. And our guide for this exploration is a pretty detailed analysis and forecast from cognitive market research. It's packed with data.
Yeah, it gives us a solid foundation to understand where things are now and, importantly, where they might be going.
Exactly. And just so we're all on the same page, when we talk about extract pens, well, think about those devices, often portable, for vaporizing concentrates, botanical extracts, and the like.
They've become increasingly popular, a really significant part of a growing industry.
For sure. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Unpack the key numbers, the trends from this source, and give you a clear picture of this market, both globally and region by region over the next decade or so.
Okay, sounds like a plan. It's definitely a market that's evolving fast.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we start? Global picture.
Let's do it. The analysis kicks things off with the global revenue back in 2021.
Okay, and that number was just over $3 billion.
That's it. $3,069.33 million to be precise. That's our baseline.
A solid baseline. And looking forward, the projections are, well, they're pretty striking, according to this report.
They really are. The forecast sees the market essentially more than doubling, hitting over $7.3 billion by 2033.
Wow.
Yeah, the specific number is 7,310.48 million.
Okay, doubling in roughly 12 years. That's significant. And the source mentions the engine behind this, the compound annual growth rate,
Yeah.
the CAGR,
Yes, the overall global CAGR is tagged at 7.5%.
7.5%. So that signals, what, just really robust, sustained growth worldwide.
Absolutely. It paints a picture of a market with really strong momentum across the board based on this data.
Okay, global view is impressive.
Yeah.
But, the real texture often comes from looking at the regions, right? Growth isn't always uniform.
Definitely not. So where should we head first? North America.
Sounds good. Let's shift focus there. It's a big chunk of the market, I imagine.
It is. The source put its value at over $1.1 billion back in 2021. That's $11,132.58 million.
Right. And the projection for 2033.
Looking at around $2.45 billion, 2,456.32 million specifically.
Okay, substantial growth.
Yeah.
And the regional CAGR for North America.
Yeah.
The source says 6.651%.
Correct. Solid growth, as you said, but
But it's actually a bit slower than that global 7.5% average we just talked about.
exactly. Which suggests that while North America is mature, maybe the highest rate of growth is happening elsewhere now.
Interesting. Does the source break it down by country? U.S., Canada?
It does. The U.S., being the largest market naturally, is projected to go from about $872 million in 2021 to over $1.8 billion by 2033.
Okay, and it's CAGR.
The CAGR for the U.S. is listed as 6.297%.
Huh. So slightly below the overall North American regional average.
Yeah, interesting nuance there.
What about Canada? Does it follow the same pattern?
Actually, no. Canada seems to be on a faster track. It started smaller, around $162 million in 2021.
Right.
But it's expected to hit over $400 million by 2033. And its CAGR is 7.847%.
Oh, wow. So that's quite a bit higher than the U.S. rate, even a bit above the global average.
It is. Stands out in the North American picture.
Definitely. And Mexico.
Mexico also shows pretty strong growth. It was under $100 million in 2021. $98.5 million or so.
And the projection.
Projected to reach almost $233.4 million by 2033, with a CGR of 7.524%.
Right on par with the global average then.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic, Europe. How's the market looking there according to the source?
Europe started at about $862.5 million in 2021, so a bit smaller than North America initially.
And the forecast for 2033?
Expected to grow significantly, reaching nearly $2 billion. The figure is 1,959.21 million.
Okay, and the regional CGR for Europe?
That's put at 7.057%.
So closer to the global average in North America was, more in line.
Seems that way, yes.
The source mentions Germany as a leader in Europe.
Yes, it's identified as the largest European market in the analysis, projected to grow from just over $200 million in 2021
to
nearly $500 million by 2033, $497.6 million, with a CAGR of 7.818%.
Okay, strong growth for Germany. What about the UK? Any standout numbers there?
The UK actually does stand out in the European figures. The source gives it a CAGR of 8.397%.
8.397%. That's the highest rate we've seen mentioned for Europe so far, right?
It is the highest listed for any European country in this analysis. It's projected to go from about $141 million in 2021 to over $372 million by 2033.
Wow. So the UK is actually growing faster than Germany rate-wise, even though Germany's market is bigger overall.
That's what the data suggests. Yeah, an interesting dynamic.
Definitely. And the source lists quite a few other European countries too, doesn't it?
It does. France, Italy, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg.
A broad spread.
Yeah, and they all show significant growth trajectories, generally doubling or tripling their 2021 values by 2033.
Any examples jump out?
Well, Russia is projected to cross the $250 million mark by 2033. France and Italy are both expected to be around $170 to $180 million by then. So widespread growth across the continent.
Okay. Now moving eastward, the source uses some pretty strong language for the Asia-Pacific market.
Yeah.
Calls it soaring.
It does, and I think the numbers really back that up. APAC started at about $620 million in 2021.
Okay, $620 million. And the projection for 2033.
This is where it gets really impressive. Over $1.76 billion, $1,761.82 million.
Wow, that is soaring, almost tripling. What's the regional CGR? Must be high.
It is 9.045%. That's the highest regional CGR mentioned in the entire analysis.
9.045%. Okay, so what's fueling that kind of acceleration in APAC specifically?
Well, the source circles back to those key drivers we mentioned earlier, the tech advancements, changing consumer tastes.
Right.
It seems these factors are just hitting particularly hard or finding fertile ground across Asia-Pacific right now.
Makes sense. Who's leading the charge there? China.
China is definitely a major force, projected to grow from around $250 million in 2021 to over $717 million by 2033.
Huge market. Japan.
Japan's also significant, expected to reach over $260 million by 2033, up from about $101 million.
Now, the source specifically calls out one country in APAC, something about exponential growth potential.
Yes, India. That's the real standout figure, not just in APAC, but in the entire report, growth rate-wise.
Okay, tell me about India.
The market there is forecasted to surge. It was about $75.6 million in 2021.
Right.
Projected to hit $271 million by 2033.
Whoa. That's almost a fourfold increase. What's the CAGR?
Get this, 11.167%.
Yep, by far the highest KGR listed for any single country or region in the whole analysis.
Incredible. That points to some really powerful underlying trends in India.
Absolutely. And beyond those big players, you've got South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia as a bloc, Taiwan, all contributing significantly.
And they're all showing strong growth, too.
Generally, yes. Most are expected to roughly double or even triple their 2021 market sizes by 2033, adding to that overall soaring picture for APAC.
Okay, let's pivot. South America, what's the story there?
South America started at around $199.5 million back in 2021.
Almost $200 million. And projected to reach.
Projected to hit nearly $500 million by 2033. The specific number is $497.112 million. Okay, so more than doubling as well. Brazil is usually the biggest market there.
It is here too. Expected to grow from about $77 million in 2021 to over $202.8 million by 2033.
Right, and Argentina.
Argentina is next, projected to grow from around $34.7 million to over $93 million by 2033.
Okay, and the source mentions others. Colombia, Peru.
Yes, Colombia, Peru, Chile are all listed, along with the rest of South America category. They're all showing strong growth trends as well.
So similar pattern, generally doubling or tripling the 2021 figures by 2033 across the board.
That seems to be the general trend for the named countries in South America, contributing to that overall regional expansion.
All right, two more regions to cover. Let's look at the Middle East.
Okay. The Middle East market was valued at around $150 million in 2021, $150.397 million.
And the projection for 2033?
It's expected to reach over $343.5 million.
Also more than doubling. Saudi Arabia is often a key market there. Is it the largest here?
It is, according to the source. Projected to grow from about $58 million in 2021 to over $136.7 million by 2033.
Okay. Turkey.
Turkey is also significant, expected to go from about $33.4 million to nearly $75 million over the same period.
And you also see growth in places like the UAE, Egypt, Qatar.
Exactly. The UAE is projected to exceed $54 million by 2033. Egypt and Qatar also show solid increases. It shows the markets making inroads across various economies in the region.
Okay, last but not least, Africa. The source mentions notable growth and expects the market to more than double.
That sums it up well. It started smaller, around $104 million in 2021, on $104.357 million.
It's projected to hit.
Nearly $300 million by 2033. The forecast is $292.419 million.
Okay, definitely more than double. Is Nigeria highlighted as a leader?
Yes, Nigeria is noted as leading in Africa. It's projected to grow from about $27 million in 2021 to over $81.8 million by 2033.
And South Africa, often a major economic hub.
South Africa is another key player, expected to grow from around $41 million to over $106 million by 2033. So actually slightly larger than Nigeria in projected value by then, based on these figures.
Interesting. So those two, plus growth in the rest of Africa, are driving that doubling trend for the continent.
That's the picture the data paints, yes.
So if we step back and, bring all these regional pieces together, the overall story from this cognitive market research analysis is one of pretty significant widespread expansion.
Absolutely. The global extract pen market seems to be on a very clear upward path based on these projections.
And the source doesn't just give numbers, it tries to explain why, right? It points to specific drivers.
It does. It explicitly mentions ongoing technological advancements, presumably making the pens better, more efficient, maybe cheaper.
Right, and also evolving consumer preferences, people just wanting these kinds of products more.
Exactly. Favoring portability, convenience, perhaps the types of extracts used, and then just broader shifts in market dynamics overall.
So what this all means, really, is that these underlying forces, they're creating the conditions for the kind of growth we've just walked through. They're shaping this rapidly changing landscape.
Precisely. The numbers reflect these driving trends.
Okay, so we've taken quite a journey there. We looked at the global figures, then we dove into North America, Europe, the soaring Asia-Pacific market, South America, the Middle East, and Africa.
All based on that detailed analysis from cognitive market research. It provides a really granular look.
It really does. And, thinking about it, the data clearly shows different speeds of growth, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the key takeaways for me.
Me too. So here's something to think about for you listening. The source points to those general drivers like tech and consumer preferences affecting things everywhere. But why do you think places like India or the UK or even Canada show those exceptionally high growth rates in the data?
Yeah, compared to other strong markets like the US or Germany that are growing, but maybe not quite as fast.
Exactly. What might be different on the ground in those specific high CAGR countries? Is it regulation? Earlier stage of adoption? Some unique cultural factor interacting with those broader trends?
It's a great question. What really stands out to you when you compare those regional stories and those standout numbers?
Pondering that why behind the different speeds.
Mm-hmm.
It adds another layer, doesn't it? Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought.
Well, we hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights into the global extract pen market. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into a market that's seen, well, a lot of change recently. And it's really feeling the pinch from some big global economic shifts. We're talking about the extract pen market.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've been digging into a pretty comprehensive analysis from cognitive market research, really trying to pull out the key takeaways.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack what's really driving this market forward. What hurdles are companies hitting? Where is it all headed? And crucially, how are those new global tariffs impacting things?
Yeah, it might seem a bit niche, maybe, at first. But as we get into it, you'll see the dynamics here, consumer trends, global trade stuff. It's actually fascinating. And it tells us a lot about how these complex markets really operate.
Okay, let's get into it, though. Let's start with the positives. What's really pushing this market? What are the growth engines?
Well, the analysis really points, first and foremost, to the increasing popularity and, maybe more importantly, the growing legalization of cannabis and CBD products globally.
Right. So as legality spreads, demand just naturally goes up for ways to consume these products.
Exactly. And extract pens, vape pens, they've become a really popular method for, well, a huge number of people.
Why them specifically? Is it just because they're available? Or is there more to it?
Oh, it's definitely more. It's the convenience factor, big time. Plus discretion and how quickly they work. You get the effects fast. And they're pretty easy to use without drawing a lot of attention.
Okay.
That mix makes them super attractive. That's a primary driver the source keeps highlighting.
And I guess that convenience and discretion links directly to needing devices that are easy to carry around, simple to operate.
Absolutely. Consumers generally want things that are quick, uncomplicated, Extract pens fit that bill. They're compact, very user-friendly, and you've got options, right? From basic disposables all the way to more advanced rechargeable ones.
Which sounds like a perfect match for younger users, maybe.
Mm.
People comfortable with tech.
Precisely. The whole design, the form factor, it really clicks with that desire for portable, intuitive gadgets.
So beyond just being easy to use, the analysis also talks about product innovation. What's happening there? What kind of innovation?
It's constantly changing. We're seeing better cartridges, smarter batteries that last longer or charge faster, more precise temperature controls too, and compatibility with different types of extracts, wax, oil, distillate. It's not just one standard thing anymore.
So brands are trying to stand out by offering a sort of more tailored experience, personalization.
Exactly that. Being able to tweak your experience maybe with temperature or by using a specific type of extract you prefer, that really boosts satisfaction. And yeah, it gives brands a way to differentiate. That personalization is definitely noted as a key driver.
Okay, so we've got the growth factors down, but like any market moving this fast, there must be some pretty big challenges too. What are the main headwinds?
Yeah, the analysis flags the regulatory landscape as a major hurdle. It's
Right.
complex, often inconsistent. Even where things are legal, the rules can be wildly different, state to state, country to country.
Ah, so it's not one clear set of rules. It's more like a patchwork quilt that keeps changing shape.
A really complicated patchwork, yeah. And that makes it tough to scale up internationally. It restricts trade across borders. And it means staying compliant is like a constant moving target. It takes a lot of resources. Definitely slows down the overall market expansion.
And we've all seen headlines about health and safety issues in this area.
That's another huge challenge the source points to. Yes, those incidents with, say, counterfeit or contaminated cartridges, they got a lot of negative attention,
Yeah.
led to, more public scrutiny, even temporary bans in some areas, and it definitely damaged consumer trust.
Which you'd expect brings on tighter regulations in response.
It does, and those crackdowns, while often needed, can end up hurting legitimate businesses too, and tarnish the reputation of the whole sector, not just the bad actors involved.
And what about competition? Sounds like it's pretty fierce out there.
Oh, incredibly, especially in places like North America where the market's more developed. There's just been this flood of new companies jumping in, lots of white label brands too.
White label, you mean basically generic products that companies just put their own branding on.
That's it. So you get market saturation pretty quickly, lots of similar stuff out there that leads to intense price wars, margins get really squeezed, and it's tough for brands to build any real loyalty. Smaller companies, they really struggle unless they have something truly unique or a lot of scale behind them.
Okay, so facing those challenges, regulations, safety worries, fierce competition, where does the market go from here? What trends are shaping the future?
Well, one definite trend is a move towards more premium devices
Hmm.
and reusable ones. Consumers who use these regularly, they're starting to look beyond the basic cheap options.
Right. They want more features, better performance, maybe.
Exactly. Pens with things like adjustable temperature settings, for a customized hit. Longer battery life is a big one. And refillable tanks. These higher-end devices, they often perform better, feel better, and can actually save money in the long run compared to constantly buying disposables.
Makes sense if you're a regular user looking for consistency.
Right. And another big trend is smart tech integration. We're seeing extract pens becoming, connected devices.
Connected. How so? Like linking up to your phone.
Yeah, precisely. Bluetooth connectivity, mobile apps, they let you track your usage, maybe set very specific temperature profiles, even lock the device for safety.
Mhm.
It sort of aligns this market with those broader trends you see in like health and wellness tech, activity trackers, that sort of thing.
That seems like a pretty natural next step, bringing that kind of user interface into this product too.
It does. And then the final major trend that the analysis highlights is a growing focus on sustainability.
Ah, driven by environmental concerns, I assume.
Oh,
All those
to-
disposable pens piling up.
Absolutely. The waste issue is becoming a bigger deal, so companies are pushing towards more eco-friendly options, refillable pens, recyclable components, things like that.
Is that trend stronger in some places than others?
The source suggests it's gaining more traction where environmental awareness is generally higher among consumers, so parts of the US, Canada, Europe especially.
Okay, right. So we've looked at the internal market forces, the drivers, the challenges, the future trends. Now let's talk about this major external shockwave that's hitting not just this industry, but loads of others. The 2025 tariffs.
Yeah, this is a really significant factor detailed in the analysis. It kicked off in April 2025. Under the renewed U.S. administration, they rolled out this sweeping new set of tariffs.
The analysis actually calls them the Liberation Day tariffs. What was the idea behind them, officially?
Well, the stated aims were reducing trade deficits and trying to boost domestic manufacturing in the U.S. But the impact, as you can imagine, is really widespread.
And the source gives us actual numbers on the tariff rates.
It does. They vary quite a bit, like 10% on goods from places like the UK and Australia, but then up to a pretty staggering 46% on stuff coming from Vietnam. And the really crucial one for this market, a blanket 34% tariff on imports from China.
34% on China.
Yeah.
Okay, why is that specific one so critical for extract pens?
Because, as the source makes very clear, this market is heavily reliant on Chinese manufacturing for key components. We're talking batteries, the cartridges themselves, the heating elements. A lot of the core tech originates there.
Ouch. So slapping a 34% tariff on those essential parts.
Means a direct and pretty substantial hike in the cost of goods for companies making or assembling these pens. The analysis actually estimates that input costs went up by somewhere between 15 and 30%.
Wow, that's a huge hit to the basic cost of making the product.
Yeah.
What does that force brands to do? Not just pen brands, but consumer goods in general.
It forces a major rethink of their whole supply chain strategy. Companies are stuck with some really tough choices. Do they absorb those higher costs and just accept lower margins? Do they try to pass the cost onto consumers by raising prices? Do they cut back on the number of products they offer and, reduce SKUs to simplify things? Or do they attempt the complicated process of moving production somewhere else, closer to home maybe, or to a country not hit as hard by tariffs?
And for smaller brands, the ones without deep pockets, that must be incredibly challenging.
It really adds another layer of serious pressure, yeah. They might just not have the capital or the connections to quickly find and approve new suppliers or redesign their products around different components.
So given this really volatile situation with tariffs, how are companies trying to cope? The source, Cognitive Market Research, really stresses the importance of data here, right?
Absolutely. This is where good data becomes, well, essential for survival almost. Companies are using real-time data feeds to make much smarter decisions about sourcing. It's not just about old supplier lists anymore. They're using data to actively map where the risks are now, given the tariffs, and to identify potential alternatives that might be less exposed.
Like figuring out which countries got lower tariffs or which suppliers there could actually handle the volume.
Exactly. And they're using data to test out new product designs too, seeing how swapping components or changing where assembly happens might affect the final cost and the quality. And critically important, they're tracking price sensitivity very closely. With costs shooting up, they need solid data on how much they can actually raise prices before consumers start walking away.
Right. That's a really tricky balancing act. Cover your costs, but don't price yourself out of existence.
It is. And the analysis also mentions companies using scenario modeling. Think of it like running sophisticated what-if simulations with data. They plug in different potential tariff scenarios, different supplier options, different cost increases to try and anticipate what might happen next and to proactively figure out how to become less dependent on those really vulnerable supply chains, like the ones heavily reliant on China.
So it's about using data not just to react to the tariffs, but to get ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
to diversify.
Precisely. Whether that means finding more local suppliers or even redesigning the product to use materials sourced from regions less impacted by the tariffs, good data and research are basically the key tools for navigating this new trade reality.
Okay, so let's try and pull us all together. After this deep dive into the extract pen market, what's the main takeaway?
Well, we're looking at a market that's definitely dynamic. It's fueled by some strong growth factors, legalization, convenience, innovation, but it's also being seriously tested by complex regulations, those safety concerns we talked about, really tough competition, and now this huge disruption from the global tariffs.
And the cognitive market research analysis seems to offer a pretty clear view on what it takes to succeed going forward.
It does. The conclusion is pretty stark, really. The brands that are likely to thrive in this challenging environment are the ones that manage to innovate boldly, that act responsibly, especially around safety, to keep consumer trust. And crucially, that rely on solid, data-driven strategies to handle all this complexity, especially in their supply chains and costing.
It really is fascinating when you think about how sensitive the specific market consumer tech essentially is to global trade policy, where things get made, shifts in technology. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might those same kinds of forces be quietly reshaping other products and services you use every day, the ones you might not even think twice about? And what could the ripple effects of those changes ultimately mean for you?